Good morning, everyone. We're continuing on with our meditations in the Psalms, and today will be our last meditation on Psalm number 2. So I'll begin by reading Psalm 2. Why do the heathen rage, and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us break their bands asunder, and cast away their cords from us. He that sitteth in heaven shall laugh, the Lord shall have them in derision. Then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Yet have I set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. The Lord hath said unto me, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron, thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings, be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. So last time we talked about breaking this psalm down into three parts. The first part being in the beginning, where we see the people of the earth raging, the heathen raging, the rulers of the world taking counsel against God and against his anointed one. And in the second part, we see God's response, him in heaven laughing at this people rising up against him. And then his work in instituting his son, right, the sending of his son, and his effect, his working in the world. And the last part is what we'll look at today, is the advice given to the kings of the world, those who were raging against God, counseling against God. And let me just read that really quickly again. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings, be instructed, ye judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. Now, I will note that it is a commonplace in older times to sometimes address all the people of a nation by addressing the king. For as the rulers went, so went the people. As the rulers worshipped, so worshipped the people. So the instruction here is for the kings, for those who were raging against God, those who were counseling against the Lord and his anointed. But through them, it would go to all the people that they were ruling. And the instruction, the advice that is given to them, is that they be instructed, and that they serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. They kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and they perish from the way. So it is advice to submit, and not just submit, but to submit with fear and trembling. When I was in Israel a couple months ago, a few weeks ago, the guide, the teacher who was leading us through there, pushed hard on the fact that in the Old Testament it was extremely important. One of the most important things in the worship of God was to take care for the holiness of God, the purity of worship. Extreme care was taken, and extreme punishments came from ignoring the holiness of God, for not taking care to be pure in worship. And it's throughout all of the Old Testament. God's people had to be pure in their worship. And we have a tendency to recognize that in the Old Testament, but then to say that when we get to the New, things have changed. We don't have all the restrictions. We don't have all the purification rituals that we have to go through. And in a sense, we tend to divide God into two parts, or even in sometimes cases, two gods, right? There's the God of the Old Testament, for whom holiness and purity was very important. But then when we get to the age of grace, and God's a different God, and now he's not so concerned with that. He's relaxed now, and it doesn't matter. This is not true. God does not change. And if holiness is important to him in the beginning, it's still important to him now. And in fact, in the New Testament, we do have commands to keep ourselves holy as he is holy, that God's people should be pure. As a nation of priests, as a people of priests, we are to be holy. We are to be pure. We are commanded to do so. And we can learn, I think, from the restrictions and from the ritual purity that was demanded of the Old Testament. Even if, indeed, we're not commanded to do all of those things, it is still important that we keep ourselves pure because we serve a pure and holy God. It's important to keep that in mind. In verse 12, the last verse, we have the phrase, "Kiss the Son, lest he be angry." I'm leaning here on people who are far better in Hebrew than I am. And Hebrew scholars say that phrase that begins that verse, "Kiss the Son," is a very obscure phrase. It's a very difficult one to translate, and there's some wildly varying translations of it. One of them, from a Hebrew translator that I like, puts it this way. He says, and this sounds very different, right? "Arm yourselves with purity, lest he be angry." Arm yourselves with purity. Now, we may get nervous and say, what is it, kiss the Son, or is it arm yourselves with purity? Frankly, I don't care one way or the other, because both are right, both are fitting. Kiss the Son, as if we are approaching a sovereign and kissing his ring, kissing his hand, and showing our submission, showing our willingness to be his servant and our subjection to him. Arm yourself with purity. Put on purity as we come before him. Don't come before him as pictured in the beginning of the psalm, in raging, in battle against him, testing our mettle against him, but put on instead the purity required to come before God and worship him in holiness. This week, Holy Week, right? I would encourage us all to spend time honestly before God, quietly before God, asking him, where am I impure? Where would you have me purify myself? How would you have me purify myself? Confess. This is a week for confession. Confess to him and to others whom you may have harmed. And spend time in quietness before God, seeking the cleansing from him that comes from what we celebrate this week. Acknowledge his purity, his holiness, and ask him to make you pure, to make you holy as we come before him. To this I would add, once again, Psalm 2 ends as Psalm 1 begins, right? Blessed with a blessing. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. We can have confidence that we can come to God in our impure state and ask to be made pure, because we know that in our trusting him, we are blessed. So, this week, these next few days, I encourage us to put ourselves before God, asking him to show us ourselves, taking a hard look at ourselves again, and asking him to show us our impurities so that we may confess them, we may deal with them, and we may become holy as he is holy. God bless. I continue to pray and love you all, and I hope you're all doing well, and I pray God's blessing on you. All right.